بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا المرسلين. So carrying on from last week, inshallah, where we will remember what happened last week, isn't it?
Yeah. So Umar ibn Khattab became Muslim.
Okay. So last week was the story of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu becoming Muslim. So what happened very recently, a long time ago, we spoke about how many of the Quraysh, they came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And remember, they've got their aim, which is to stop Islam spreading. And so their aim was to stop Islam spreading in Makkah, around the world. So now the Prophet ﷺ is coming, he's calling people to Islam. And we notice that these people, they come in different ways. Sometimes they say, we'll give you loads of money if you stop. Sometimes they say, we'll make you our king if you stop. And they said, we'll make you our leader, we'll give you free health service, health treatment. They gave him so many offers. And he refused all of these. And then another way they tried to negotiate was coming and telling him that, how can you go against your forefathers? How can you do these kind of things? Sometimes they used his uncle Abu Talib to try and get him. So all these negotiations had happened. And they'd failed on all of their negotiations. Then we noticed that Hamza radiallahu anhu became Muslim. And Umar radiallahu anhu last week, we mentioned he became Muslim. And as well as this, there was a series of assassination attempts which had been made in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one of the first ones which we mentioned was when he was praying in the Kaaba, and then Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayth, he came and he got a cloth and wrapped it around the throat of the Prophet ﷺ and really strangled him. Where Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had to come and push him away. And many of the people watching said that if he had not come, then he would have killed the Prophet ﷺ. This is how severe this attempt was on his life. Abu Jahl once, he said that he got really angry and he said that I'm going to go and kill the Prophet ﷺ. So he got a big stone and said, I'm going to throw it and I'm going to kill him. And this was another attempt which we also mentioned. And even last week, the whole story's basis is on an attempt at the assassination of the Prophet ﷺ, where Umar radiallahu anhu leaves his house, incited by Abu Jahl's offer of 100 camels. And he said, I'm going to kill the Prophet ﷺ. Again, he ended up becoming Muslim. But there was a series of attempts on the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And these are all things which contributed to Abu Talib realizing the severity of the situation. That now, very soon, the people of the Quraysh will attempt to murder the Prophet ﷺ. They're already attempting, and they're going to do it very soon. So, for this reason, all of these assassination attempts and the anger of the people of Quraysh at the Prophet ﷺ and at Islam, all of this made Abu Talib realize that there needs to be a form of protection for the Prophet ﷺ and Islam and the Muslims. So, obviously, being the leader of the tribe, so there's two main tribes of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the Banu Hashim and the Banu Muttalib. And Abu Talib gathered all of these people. So this is, again, remember, the tribes are based on the family. So he gathers his close family, and he got his close family to pledge that they will protect the Prophet ﷺ. So he was proactive in this. He saw the situation change. People are now actively trying to kill the Prophet ﷺ. So he said that we'll all have to come and defend him. So now there's a defense there. This makes a big change. Remember, previously, people are going around and trying to make attempts on his life, willy-nilly, basically. Somebody says, oh, I'll give you 100 camels. Somebody goes and tries to murder him. Another person is wandering around. So this is a very serious situation. It's very precarious as well. So this is why Abu Talib, by instilling this, by making sure that at least the whole of Banu Talib, the very clan of the Prophet ﷺ, Banu Muttalib, and the clan of Banu Hashim, both of these offered 100% protection, that if anybody tried to an attempt on his life, they will take revenge. It's not something that you're allowed to do. Again, this task in itself was not a simple thing. It's like, you didn't just send everyone a WhatsApp message and say, please make sure you're at the mosque for this time. We're all going to show, we're going to sign the petition. That we're not going to. It wasn't one of those. He had to go, and the people he trusted, who he thought loved the Prophet. Again, he gave a speech, in fact. He brought them together. He assembles the family, gives a speech, tells them that, look, even if many of these were not Muslims, the famous members of the Prophet ﷺ's family, some of them became Muslims. Many of his own tribe were not even Muslims. So this was a pledge. Abu Talib says that despite the fact you're not Muslim, remember, even before the Prophet ﷺ became 40, and even before he got prophethood, he was loved by the whole of Makkah. That was obvious. And even afterwards, he was still that same person with that best character, with the best dealings, the one that was treated as trustworthy by everyone. This lasts all the way. In fact, again, like we mention all the time, 13 years after being called a liar when he declared prophethood, the same people who are not believing in him are the same people, because remember, before he departs to leave Makkah, he's returning the things of the people of Makkah who've driven him out because they trust him to look after their things. And this is that same person. So obviously even the people of his family, they still had a lot of love for him. And this was something within the Arabs, that you fight for your tribe, you look after your close people. So when Abu Talib made this claim, he stood up and said, we are now going to look after the Prophet ﷺ. These people declared that we will look after the Prophet ﷺ. This basically means that if you kill him, there will be a civil war in Makkah. If you try again, there will be a war. It's not something, his blood is not that cheap. It's not something you can go for. So this is the pact which Abu Talib made all of his tribe declare, which meant that the rest of Makkah realized that this is not something they can achieve. They can't just end his life. So they've come together, they've formed together. They said that we are not going to back down. If you want to try and attack our member of our tribe, we're not going to back down easily. This will be a difficult task. This will lead to a lot of bloodshed, which meant that they were not going to try and assassinate the Prophet ﷺ, because they didn't want a civil war. They realized the implications. And also notice, the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ was the most respected and the most powerful there. There's many tribes there, but these were very, very well respected tribes. And also the tribes were linked with other tribes. The more respect you had meant that if you were a very powerful tribe, you were respected by other tribes as well, because you're still related, just a bit more distantly. So the way that other tribes perceive you, how powerful you seem, will determine how much the rest of the tribes of Makkah would also give Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib their support in the case of any kind of disagreement. So this was the implication of this action of Abu Talib. He says, come together. There's been these attempts on the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and proactively, he realizes that the danger is going to come, and proactively he goes and makes the change which needs to be made. He gets everybody together. He gets them together and realizes and makes sure that the life of the Prophet ﷺ is safe. So he sees the danger in advance. This is something which we see from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ himself as well, that he was always proactive. He always looked forwards. He had massive goals in life. I mean, before he passed away, and between that time when he got prophethood and he passed away, the amount of things he achieved was not by mere coincidence. It was very well thought out. One of the things we learn from Sunnah is to be the most organized, is to know where you're going, why you want to get there, and also most importantly, how you're going to get there. Every day we have something we do which gets us to becoming that person we want to be on the day that we die. We're all working towards this day that we die. There's certain things in our life which we don't have at the moment, which we want to have in our life by the time we die. We want to have certain qualities in our lives, which at the moment we don't have. Maybe we want to concentrate in our salah. We might not do that at the moment. But we want to, before we pass away, we want to be able to pray to Allah properly. Our salah wants to be something which transforms us. It changes our lives. Something which connects us to Allah. Something which actually makes us realize our purpose. Or we may want to understand the Quran. There's many examples we could give here. There's many things we want to achieve before we die. These would be all termed as long-term goals. Nobody learns to have full concentration in salah overnight. It's something which takes years. Many scholars say that 20 years we spent just practicing how to pray. And then 20 years we actually prayed. We were learning how to pray for 20 years. And that's how long it took us to perfect it, to the extent that for the remainder of our life, we could actually pray properly. So this is one aim we have in our lives. And this is something which requires us to be proactive. And actually think, what is it? Where am I going with my life? What do I actually want to do? Where am I? Before I die, what do I want to have done with my life? What do I want to have achieved? And then we choose that thing and then we work towards it. And we make sure we get there. So anyway, being proactive is from the Sunnah. That's the point. So this is what happened. So there was the Sunnah of being proactive. They made this move. They made the first move. Now remember the Quraysh. They tried to negotiate. They tried to kill the Prophet ﷺ. Tried to do so many things. So now what they do is they come up with this plan, and this is what today's title is boycotting these tribes. Everybody who says that we protect Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they promise that we will boycott them. We're not going to allow you to trade with us two ways, socially and economically. Socially, can't get married to them, can't be friends with them, can't go and have a cup of tea with them, can't go and relax with them, can't give them comfort, can't give them any love. Socially, you're cut off. You can't get married into that family. Some families were divorced at that time. That's one thing. Another thing is economically, you can't trade with them. And this is what we noticed, that they were starved of food. That any food that they had, they were not able to get any more for the future. So what happened is Abu Talib, being the leader of the tribe, he actually had a valley outside of Makkah. To the northeast of Makkah, he owned a valley there. Just like in Colchester, as we realize, every time a new house gets built, we realize there's land around Colchester. Somebody owned that land. This is the kind of property we're talking about. Right on the outskirts of Makkah, it's a piece of land which was obviously inherited by Abu Talib from his grandfather. It used to belong to his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. So all of his tribe, they went and settled in this valley. And they were now camping there. And this is when the boycott was in place. It was essentially a siege. There was one way into the valley and only one way out. And nobody was allowed to take food there. Nobody was allowed to trade with these people. Nobody was allowed to even talk to these people. There's no way for them to get food. This is the severity which they were given. They were not allowed to be married to other people. Anybody that talks to them, this is, in fact, all of these conditions that are written down. Somebody took it upon themselves that we are going to write these conditions down. That anybody who marries these tribes, then we will also boycott them. And this document was prepared, and then this document was hung inside the Kaaba. One, to show the authenticity almost. This is the real document, please follow this, make sure this is followed. Another reason is that everybody who comes from outside Makkah, the main reason they used to come to Makkah was for the Kaaba, the idols. So they would definitely see the message. So you can't come from outside and start giving them food. You can't come from outside and start helping them. The authorities have made that decision. You're not allowed to help these people. These people are exiled. You're not allowed to talk to them, you're not allowed to trade with them. And this is the decision which was made against these people. So this is the severity they had no food. And obviously this is something which maybe we can consider it's okay for a few days, but this lasted for 3 years. That this whole boycott, that this pact that they signed, and everybody followed it. So originally when Abu Talib, he got his family together, there's one certain person who we know is in the family of the Prophet ﷺ who does not agree with the Prophet ﷺ, who is very close to the Prophet ﷺ. He's the brother of Abu Talib, Abu Lahab. Yeah, so the other uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. And he, right from the beginning, in fact, was the first person to publicly declare opposition to Islam. So now he also was assembled, but he came to that meeting and he declared that I'm not going to be any part of any protection of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the whole reason why Abu Talib got them together and said that despite you being Muslims or non-Muslims, let's protect the Prophet ﷺ. Everyone agreed apart from Abu Lahab. So now everybody had this option to leave the protection, to stop protecting the Prophet ﷺ. And then you will stop being boycotted. And even if you're not from these tribes, you could come and you could try and help these people, and then you would be boycotted. So everybody who helped Banu Hashim or Banu Muttalib was boycotted, and if you decided that, even if you were part of the tribe and you decided to leave, then you wouldn't be boycotted. The condition, they said, that we will apply all of these conditions until these people give up their protection for the Prophet ﷺ. They say we're not going to protect him, they allow us basically to kill him. This was the demand. This is why the boycott took place. That you're not allowing us to get rid of this problem which we are having inside our city. So this is how they kind of presented it, that we need to get rid of this. We're not going to do anything with you. We're going to completely starve you. We're going to make you die out. We're going to starve you of everything until you die, basically. This was what they were trying to do. Either you give us, hand over the Prophet, or we will starve you to death. And this is the problems that they were taking them. And very often we even find, with the food, they had a lot of struggles. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, radiyallahu anhu, he narrates a story that during this boycott, he says that once I went and I was going somewhere, and my foot just touched something on my way, and I couldn't see, it was nighttime. And then I picked it up, and I found it was the skin of an animal. So it was some leather, it was the skin of an animal. And he said that at that time there was no food around. So I washed it, cleaned it, made sure it was clean, and then I ground it down and I ate it. This is how hungry he was. He said this was my food for 3 days, this piece of skin. And the condition of that valley was that children would, if it lasts for 3 years, many babies would have been there, young children. The sound of their crying could be heard. Many of the people that were there, food was completely blockaded from them, blockaded. So they were eating leaves, they were sucking on leaves. Some of them were eating the bark of the tree. There was nothing to eat at that time. When food came into Makkah from outside, imagine you got a city, so if you think of our villages back home, that kind of thing, try and imagine that with the food kind of being delivered on a regular basis. So now the trade, somebody comes and decides to bring, I don't know, let's imagine somebody brings dates from outside. There's a new type of date they've brought in from somewhere else, and they are selling it in Makkah. The leaders of Makkah would make sure, firstly, they'd inform them that the rules of this city, our trade rules are, that you can't sell to these people. They were sanctioned. Just like whenever somebody does something wrong, we sanction. So the West have sanctioned Iran, for example, for developing nuclear weapons, something like this. So they put sanctions because we don't want you to do this, stop doing it. So now we're going to put these sanctions on you. You hand over the Prophet, allow us to kill him, or you will have these problems. And this is the authorities, they implemented this. Somebody comes from outside, you're not allowed to sell to them. And to the extent Abu Lahab, he would in fact pay them out. He would say, how much is this? 5 dinars. He would say, I'll buy it for 10, make sure you don't sell it to anybody from Banu Hashim. So these are the ways that they starved the Muslims from all kind of food. And the different narrations we have that they would, many of them at this time, they were tying stones to their bellies. Many people obviously, this is something sometimes we miss, that many people died at this time. Due to this oppression, many of Banu Muttalib and Banu Hashim, they passed away. Many of the kids died, many of the adults died. And obviously the females as well. So this is, the people now began to see this condition. Remember, this lasted for 3 years. So it started in the Muharram, the very first month of the 7th year of Hijrah. Remember, when did Umar and Hamza become Muslim? Generally in the 6th year. Yes, in the 6th year, that's when, in Shawwal, we know that's when Hamza and Umar radiallahu anhu, they became Muslim. Then after this, they started giving da'wah publicly, Islam became a little bit stronger, and then this is when this happened, in the 7th year, just a few months after that. So now in the 7th year, this lasted all the way to the 10th year. For 3 years, they were boycotted and sieged like this. And you can imagine, over the course of 3 years, the implications of this, the way this would have affected them. People would have died. People would have been starved to death. Children would have been constantly crying. There would have been, so many problems going on there. So now, obviously, the people of Makkah would see this. There's one narration, in fact, where just on the back of my hand, on the top, where once Hakim bin Hizam, he was related to Khadija radiallahu anha. She was his aunt. And once he was trying to take some food to the valley, so he's trying to, again, this is like smuggling it in, like trying to get something through customs. So now he's going there, he's trying to get there, and Abu Jahl sees him. And Abu Jahl sees him and says, where are you going? How dare you give them food? We're boycotting them. We're going to boycott you as well. And eventually, Abu Jahl actually wasn't going to let him go past. But then another person came, who was Al-Bukhtari. And when he came, he intervened as well. And he eventually allowed him to actually go through and give the food into the valley. So now we see that there's a lot of sympathy from some people. A lot of people trying to take food there. Many people would have to smuggle the food in and take it there. So food is being smuggled in very, very less. They were starving, many people were dying, but people are seeing their plight, and some of the nicer people of Makkah are trying to sort out this problem. And this is where we see that the alliance is formed. But originally there was an alliance against the Muslims, it was hung in the Kaaba, and then now we find that some of the non-Muslims start feeling a lot of pity. Remember, they're all interrelated. Some of the people are saying that these are our cousins, these are our relatives, we know them so well, and look what's happening to them. So Hisham bin Amr, he's one person who was known to take food down to the people in the valley. And he once decided that, he saw the condition, babies are crying, people are dying. and chaos is basically there. And he said, how can we let this happen to our relatives? So he started this, again, this is a revolution almost. This is, trying to, something's wrong in society, so these people have decided we're going to fix it. And again, here we see that this very good action was taken, it was carried out by non-Muslims. It wasn't the Muslims who pioneered this. It was the non-Muslims who were, taking this forward. So very often we'll have very good activities being conducted by people who are not Muslims. And equally, these can be things which the Muslims may not be doing. It doesn't mean that the Muslims wouldn't participate, support, and get involved in these kind of things. This is something we see, that we should be involved very well in the community. Because here, look at what they achieved. So this person, he came and he just in his mind, that how can we oppress these people? His humanity got the better of him. How can we oppress people for no reason? So he came and he spoke to somebody else. So it was secretly, and I can just remember the condition. This is boycott. Authorities said, if you try and speak to them, you will also be boycotted. Somebody tried to give them food and Abu Jahl nearly knocked him out. These are the kind of problems that they have. So he comes and he goes to see Zuhayr bin Abi Umayyah. And this was at night time. And he goes to see him and he kind of tells him off. He goes that, how can you relax and eat and sleep comfortably, and your cousins are there in the valley starving to death? Now, how can you relax? How can you bear that? How can you, let that happen? Why don't you do something? And then he said, the reply was that, I can't really do anything myself. But then he went and spoke to a third person. He said, we need more people. We need to get everybody together on this. We need to get this, we need to get this sorted out. So then they went and spoke, and then these ended up with 5 people here. So 5 people were together. So Hisham bin Amr, Zuhayr bin Abi Umayyah, Mut'im bin Adi, and Abu Bakhtari is the same person who intervened to let the food go through, and Zam'a bin al-Aswad. So these 5 people came together and they formed this alliance. They said that, they started making noise. They started going around saying that, how can we let this happen to our cousins and to our uncles and to our nephews and nieces over there? How can we let this happen? And then they came to, and they started their da'wah, and they started their campaign, they started their protest. They started this from the Kaaba itself. So they came to the Kaaba and they started saying that, this is oppression, this must be stopped. And they kept saying this. And eventually they took it there, and obviously it became news that these very, very established, powerful people are coming around and they're saying that, we have to stop doing this thing. And Abu Jahl, when he found out, obviously having the hatred for Islam that he had, he said that this is something everybody agreed on. So, everybody's happy with this. We all signed it. 40 people had signed it and stuck it in the Kaaba. 40 people have agreed. So this is definitely, we can't just, overturn this. Can't just turn this off. And then many people started supporting that, this is, why are we oppressing our own family? Why are we being so awful to our own uncles? We have to stop this from happening. So they carried on protesting, they carried on making their point. And then Abu Talib, he himself, he was sitting in the Mataf at that time, he was near the Kaaba. So he saw this all happening. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ, he just got revelation that, that pact that was written, it's hanging in the Kaaba. He said that Allah has told him that this pact has been eaten by ants. All the wording has been eaten by ants. The only thing which is left is the paper, and if anywhere Allah's name has been written. So he said that this whole thing has been eaten up. And Abu Talib said that, let me make a proposal that if this revelation which the Prophet ﷺ has got, if it's true, then you guys all have to stop this boycott. And if it's not true, then I will join you guys. If this revelation is not true, then I will stop defending him. I will tell Banu Talib. In fact, I will hand him over to you myself. So he said that, this is, we'll check this and let's see how it goes. So they checked this, and obviously the revelation was true. When they went inside the Kaaba, they went and checked, and they saw that the whole thing had been eaten except the name of Allah. And this is when some of them realized, some of them didn't realize this and didn't accept this. But obviously at this point they would have to agree that they would release the Prophet. So this is the boycott which happened, and very often we may know the fact the boycott happened. The Muslims were for 3 years, nobody was trading with them. But the way that it actually affects the society, the way the benefits and the lessons that we take from it, the fact that it was organized, it was something which they thought through, something which they practiced as well, and the amount of pain which they had to go through, the amount of sacrifice the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ, his families, they had to go through, is something which we can always try and relate to in our lives. That our lives I mean, life is, sometimes hard. But think of, we're not having to eat leaves. We're not having to, eat the bark of tree. We're not having to find things lying around and starting to eat them. There's many blessings in our lives which we overlook. And sometimes remembering the sacrifices they went through, all for just one sake. This was only for the sake of Islam. This was simply just for their whole life was given and sacrificed. Their whole life was ruined just to protect Islam. And all the Muslims who were trying to support the Prophet ﷺ, so much hardship they went through, so much they had to give up. So this is something which obviously we look to for inspiration, something which allows us to also improve ourselves, increase our sacrifice, realize we can actually tolerate more, we can work harder, we can achieve more. And also it keeps in mind, we can always keep in mind what we're trying to actually work towards. What do we hope to become, what do we hope to achieve? And actually plan to, on a daily basis, execute things to actually get there. So I make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me all of us the ability to understand and appreciate all these sacrifices and make these, sacrifices in our lives. We've got some comments.
Oh, okay.
Some YouTube likes.
What's the comment?
People just showing their support.
What happened to the camera?
It was too much effort, man. I returned it. I didn't like it.
You just returned.
Yeah, because it wasn't as good as the old one. So.
Oh.
And the guy that.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually live on YouTube.
Yeah. It's gone.
Do